going to be making some yeast-based pizza dough from scratch. Here's what you're going to need. Warm water, some yeast. You can use the traditional yeast or instant yeast, and we'll talk about that in a bit. You'll need some sugar, some salt. I prefer to use sea salt, but you use what you have. Flour, all-purpose flour is just fine, and some oil. And again, the choice of oil is yours. I use olive oil, but you can definitely use canola oil as well. Our recipe and that full ingredient list will be at the end of the video, so you can see it once again. Step 1, we're going to proof the yeast. I'm using a dry active yeast, and so I need to proof it in some warm water to make sure that it is in fact still active. If you are using instant yeast, you can skip this part, and we'll talk about that again later. So first I have a cup of warm water. It is about 108 degrees. We want it about 110, 115 degrees if you have a thermometer. If you don't have a thermometer, it just needs to be a little bit over body temperature. So it should feel warm, but not hot. So we're going to put that into the bowl. And to this I am adding a teaspoon of sugar. This just helps feed the yeast so it gets it active a little bit faster. We'll dissolve that in. And then I'm going to sprinkle over 2 teaspoons of the yeast. Now I have my yeast as it is purchased in bulk. If you have your yeast in packets, this is the equivalent of 1 packet. I'm going to sprinkle this on the top and let it rest for about 10 minutes or until it's nice and bubbly. Okay, so 10 minutes has gone by, and as you can see, our yeast is nice and bubbly. And we're ready to add some more ingredients. So I'm going to add a little bit more sugar, a little bit of salt. As I said, I'm using sea salt, but regular table salt is just fine, and some olive oil. And again, regular oil is fine, whatever you have. Give this a little mix. And then I'm going to add about 1.5 cups of flour. Not precise, just to get some of it in there to get this started. And we're going to mix this really well until it's nice and smooth and a little bit stretchy. And I think this is an important part, to get this well mixed. Fumes nice and smooth. It's got lots of stretch to it, and so we can add more flour now, a little bit at a time, until it starts to pull away from the bowl. So I've added about an extra cup of flour, a little bit more perhaps. You see it's pulling away from the bowl. It's still a little shaggy, but that's okay. It will come together as we need it. So I'm going to sprinkle my table with a little bit of flour, not too much, and turn the dough out there. I like to knead on the table. Some people knead in the bowl, and that is fine as well if that's your preference. So kneading, this is just how we make it nice and smooth. We're stretching and developing those glutens. There are lots of different ways of kneading. Here's the way I do it. I like to use 2 hands. I'm going to use the palm of my hand. So I fold it towards me and push away. Turn, fold, and push, turn, fold, and push. And we're going to do this for about 5-10 minutes until it's nice and smooth and feels a bit like a baby's bottom. Some people like to knead with 1 hand. I find this harder to do, but lots of people do it this way. So they're turning and folding just with 1 hand, get into a real rhythm. It's harder for me to do. If you have a stand mixer, you can always use that as well, and use the dough hook on it. If you're using a stand mixer, you have to watch it a little bit more. You can over knead with a stand mixer. It's really hard to over knead the dough when you're kneading by hand. This is great exercise for your arms, for your wrists. Get your kids involved. It's a great workout. Lots of fun. All right, so we have kneaded the dough for about 10 minutes. It feels lovely and smooth. One good way to check and see if you've kneaded enough is to indent with 2 fingers. Just give it a gentle press and it should bounce back quite quickly. So we're going to wash the bowl that we mixed our dough up in. One handy little tip, use cold water. It makes it so much easier to clean it up. Hot water, warm water will turn all that flour into glue. So cold water seems to make it much easier. So I'm just putting a bit of olive oil in the bowl, around the edges, because it is going to rise. Put it nice side down, give it a twirl, and cover it up. And turn it right side up, and then we're going to just cover it with a tea towel. Now if you wanted to make this really early in the day, you can put it somewhere cool, put it in the fridge and let it rise really, really slowly. If you're cooking and ready to have dinner or eat your pizza in an hour or so, then just leave it out on the countertop in a draft-free place if you can, so not in front of an open window, but tucked away somewhere where it'll stay fairly warm, and it should be risen about double in 45 minutes to an hour. All right, so we are back. This is risen for about 45-50 minutes, and as we can see, it is lovely and full. It's doubled in size, so we're going to take it out of the bowl, back on the table, just sprinkle with a little bit of flour on the table so it doesn't stick, and I'm going to cut it into 2. You could use a knife, whatever you have handy, and a scraper works really well as well. I'm going to set one of these aside. Okay, so now we're going to shape our dough. I have half of the dough here. Depending on what you're going to cook it on, you can cook it on a cookie sheet, on a pizza stone or a bread stone if you have one, in a cast iron frying pan if you have one. So depending on what you're using, you're going to do it to that shape. I'm doing mine on a bread stone, so it's going to be a rather irregular shape. I like to start by just sort of using my fingers to start to stretch it out. And get sort of the general shape that you're after if you can. Now, the pizza store wouldn't like me for saying this, perhaps, but I do use a rolling pin. I just find it a little bit easier. If you wanted to, you could try picking it up and using your knuckles to stretch it out, but I'm not very good at that. So we are going to use a rolling pin. I have one here, and roll it out to whatever thickness is your preference. Okay, so I have rolled this out to approximately the size that I want. Here's a handy little trick if you want to make it a little bit longer and you're not using your rolling pin. If you sort of fold it, accordion fold in 3 and pick it up, and just kind of let the weight of the dough pull down in the direction you want, and it gives you a little bit more length or width, whichever it is that you're looking for. So now we're ready to go. Now, as I said, I'm using a pizza stone, which will be in the oven, getting hot. And so I'm going to set my pizza on this peel, it's called, this board that allows me to slide it into the oven. But first I'm going to coat it with some cornmeal, and we suggest you do this with whatever pan you're using, a cookie sheet or your pizza stone or the peel. And we're going to give it a good coating so it can slide off. I'm going to set my dough on there and let it rest for about 10 minutes before coating it with my toppings. And while it's resting, I'm going to turn the oven on to 425 degrees. I hope you enjoyed your pizza as much as we did ours. Thanks for watching.